Since man and motored vehicles have come together as early as the late 1890s and early 1900s, men have always tried to find ways to find out who had the better stuff from everyone else. Since the dawning of motored vehicles, men had the new advantage of making a competition for themselves. With the mechanics' ability to build cars to go faster, this led to car races on dirt roads to settle disputes on whose car was the fastest. This was not the only motorized competition that fascinated the masses. Farmers were not going to be left out of the fun of some kind of competitive sport for themselves. Farmers did not have very much money to just go soup up a car and go racing. Whenever a farmer had extra cash, they usually spent it on the number one piece of equipment that was viable to the farm's success: the tractor. This wondrous workhorse of power has been the backbone of society since its debut in the early 1900s. The tractor took the place of the steam tractor, which required 3 hired men to operate in the field, whereas the tractor only required 1 man to do the work in the field. But how does the seemingly humble tractor have a competitive sport? Well, to answer that question, we need to look at what the tractor is best at. The word tractor comes from the Latin word trachere. Track, which means pulled, and tractor means something that pulls. The number one thing that the tractor is good at is to pull. For years, farmers have used this powerhouse of traction to pull plows, implements across the field to feed the animals. As years rolled along, many features and attachments were added or changed to meet the farmer's needs and demands. However, the number one thing that stayed the same as tractors evolved over the years to the tractors we see now in the countryside is that the tractor still lives up to its name, something that pulls. As more and more farmers became able to buy their own tractor, you can only imagine what it was like at the coffee houses and local gatherings, as farmers, like all farmers, talked about anything under the sun. How the crops were doing, how livestock was faring, what the prices of grain and livestock were, and whose tractor could do what and how much it could pull. It was probably conversations like these that led to tractor pull-offs. These tractor pull-offs were usually neighbors against neighbors, and the rules were simple and quite similar to a game of tug-of-war. The tractors would be backed up to each other and chained to the drawbars. The first tractor to pull the opposite across the center line wins. Now, this style and type of tractor pulling was by no means a fair pull.
Some guys would actually have probably a bigger tractor when they were doing these tractor pulls, which made them better advantage because they had the better traction because the tractor weighed more. Then the other tractors are kind of lighter, so they didn't have as much as traction in that. So to actually make this all work out so that everyone's about the same, and it's because it's competition in that, so they started to add weights to the smaller guys so they can actually equal up to the bigger ones, so they'll all have the same amount of weight, so it get more of a fairer pull. Some guys would actually add weights like in their wheels, on the rears, on the front wheels, some added to the frame rails on the side, and then someone would add them right to the front to actually keep their front end down. Whatever they can figure out to put in the weights at, they would stick them to get more traction and get the tractor heavier. Weights took a big priority in a lot of the tractors when they actually came out. Farmers would use their tractor, and when they would pull like a piece of equipment, a disc or something behind them, it would actually have more weight or traction to the ground, so it actually would just make the tractor slip out. So it actually makes themselves help them with the rear. With pulling that implement, they would actually add weights to the tractor, usually in the tires on the older ones, to get that tractor a lot heavier than the implement they were pulling to get that traction. So because when you have a lot of weight, the tractor has its own wheels to power itself, so that weight is going to move. But so it had more advantage of pulling that piece of equipment in the ground. So when they took this idea to the tractor pulls, when they were starting, getting into these valves of had the better tractor, so that everyone could be equalized, that everyone would be the same, they started to make sure the tractors all weighed the same. So they all had the almost a better advantage. They all had the equal advantage, but it depends on how the operator operated his tractor or what different details he can do to it to make it better long full pulls.
So when did tractor pulls officially start in Nebraska? Unfortunately, there is no official record of where and when the first tractor pull took place as a sport. However, there is a record of the first tractor tested for pulling that was done in Lincoln, Nebraska. In the early days of tractors, many farmers were taken to the cleaners for buying a tractor that did not live up to its advertising claims. In 1919, the Nebraska Tractor Test Act was implemented to test all makes of tractors before they were sold to farmers in Nebraska. The act was vigorously promoted by Wilmot Crozier of Osceola, a state representative who purchased a tractor that did not perform as advertised. The first tractor successfully tested on the Nebraska test track was a John Deere Waterloo Boy in 1920. Since then, the state of Nebraska has continued to test tractors to ensure reliability standards. However, it is still unclear on when the first tractor pull competition started in Nebraska. A few folks believe that the tractor pulls started in their own hometown or maybe the next town over. If anyone would have to guess when tractor pulls started to become popular in Nebraska, it would be safe to say that it was after World War II, about the mid-1950s. As tractor pulls became popular, what makes tractor puller enthusiasts want to be a part of the sport, and how did they get started?
Going to tractor pulls when I was little, being a kid, going with my dad, and doing it myself later on in life. I actually did pull some farm tractors, some bigger ones, and decided to buy my own and do it myself.
Well, actually, I'm a third generation puller. My grandpa started in 1963. My dad followed right after that, and then my first pull was in about 66 on lawnmowers, and that's how I got started.
When I was younger, we had garden tractors, and Dad got me started on a little garden tractor, and ever since then I kind of fell in love with it, and we built this big tractor, and I always watched him and always wanted to be a part of it. So once it got in my blood when I was young, it always stuck with me, I guess.
As a young kid, my uncle was doing some farm pulling, and I think that's how I got started. And then I just kind of developed from there with my own old tractors in the antique classes.
And I probably got started, because of him. We always went to watch the bush pullers and stuff like that together, and I got to watch him do his antiques, and I always got to play around with them afterwards, and I guess that kind of got me interested in doing it, I guess.
I got it from probably 35 years ago. A buddy of mine was building a little garden tractor. He didn't have a shop to build it in, so he was out at the farm building this little thing, and I always thought it was a joke. He got it built, and so I kind of tagged along with him and was having fun with it, and a year later I had to have my own, so we built another little one, and so then we had little garden tractors and with a motorcycle engine on it, and did that for about 10 years, and we had buddies that had these big ones, and we would go there on weekends watching them, and I always thought, boy, someday I want one of them. And slowly we graduated out of that big little one, and I bought the Mean Farmer here, and we did a lot of work to it, and I had it now 5 years, and that's how I got started with it.
I come from a long family of tractor pulling. My uncle and dad did it for a long time, so I guess something we needed in the blood to get into. We started with the garden tractors, and graduated up until this.
What made you want to be a part of the competition?
Probably the camaraderie and all the good friends and people I know over the last 20, 30 years.
Oh, I like old tractors. I like tractors in general, and competing with them just makes it a little more fun.
I like the competition part, and I like to say that you meet a lot of new people. You know, some people you might not ever talk to again, and you can shoot up a conversation for a half hour with somebody you don't even know. So that's kind of fun deal to do there, I would guess.
With all tractor pulls, there needs to be a sled for the tractor to pull. In the early days of tractor pulling, the sleds were basically a barn door that was laid on the ground with a set number of weights on top of it. These weights were usually cinder blocks that could be easily stacked and added to the sled. At first, competitors would just hitch up to the sled with a set number of weights and just pull it down the track. But as farmers began to modify their tractors, this did not provide enough of a challenge to distinguish whose tractor was the more powerful one. Organizers of these tractor pulls took a direct approach and recruited spectators to just line down the track, and as the sled was pulled across, the spectators would just stand on, adding weight to it. This may have been a thrill to spectators, but it was a potential hazard because the tractor would routinely rear up under the strain of a pull. And by rearing up, this means that tractors routinely did a pop-a-willy under the strain of a pull. It wasn't until the late 1960s that Billy Watkins of Arthur, Illinois, invented a weight-exchanging sled to provide a challenge to the tractors and to keep spectators safe. Basically, his sled was like a flatbed truck trailer with wheels at the back and the sled at the front. A movable mass, also known as the weight box, of up to 65,000 pounds started at the back of the sled over the wheels. The sled starts out a pull with the effective weight of the sled plus 0. This means that the tractor has only the weight of the sled with no added weight from the weight box. As the tractor begins its pull, the weight box is moved forward at a set rate, pushing the front of the sled further and further into the ground, increasing the friction that the tractor is pulling against.
The box on the back has about 13,000 pounds of punch-outs in it, and as that moves forward, it puts weight onto the back of the pad, and as the box keeps moving forward, there's another set of rails that starts picking up the front end of the truck. So probably close to 20,000 pounds pushed down on that pad with everything clear up tight to the front, plus the dirt being pushed in front of it.
Yeah, they all work off of the same principle. The weight when we start, which we can adjust, the weight box holds a given amount of weight. Depending on the class we're pulling, the bigger classes obviously have more weight in them. This weight box can hold up to about 24,000 pounds of lead, and it is when the puller starts, it's sitting on the wheels. Most of the weight is on the wheels. It will move relatively easily, but one of the ground axles is hooked up to a gearbox that is hooked to a set of chains that moves the weight box from the wheels to the front, and then when it goes to the front, the weight is transferred to the skid pan, and it slides very difficult. As the weight gets up further and further and further, it gets heavier and heavier and harder to move. Hence the idea of the tractor pulling, who goes the farthest wins. The further you go, the heavier it gets, and whoever goes the farthest wins is declared the winner that night. There is a transmission in there. I can select up to 5 different gears, which changes the rate at which it goes up. You can also change the amount of weight that's in the box and how much weight that it takes to get it started moving, and also the amount of weight on the end. All these are preset. When the class begins, all the pullers in that class pull the same amount of weight, and then when we change to a different class of vehicles, we adjust accordingly for that group that's going to be pulling at that time.
Not much has changed to the sleds over the years other than making it easier to move from one event to the next, as we see with Larry's sled that it is designed like a truck. So how did this model come about, and how did Larry acquire this sled?
It was put together by a group of antique tractor pullers about 20 years ago. They had bought another sled that took a tractor to pull it back, and they'd seen this design on one in Colorado, so they decided that they would try building it, and it turned out like it is basically now, and started working till they've been running it since then. And about 6 years ago, after I've been working for them, for the guys that ended up with it toward the end, helping them out with the pulls and stuff, and about 6 years ago I bought it from them when they wanted to retire.
We all know that without a sled there would not be a tractor pull. So what was the reason you wanted to own a sled?
Well, kind of keep it in the area and keep this kind of going and stuff. It just depended upon, because really there isn't anybody else in the area that serves what I do.
Owning the tractor looked a little expensive to me. I mean, you were going to invest quite a little bit of money. You get to go down the track one time. This type of thing here, you can actually, you probably spend about the same amount of money, but you do get paid for being there every night. And it's a part-time job in some regards. It's a hobby in some regards. And always did like the sport of tractor pulling ever since we're very young, and when we used to go with Dad when we were back 6-7 years old.
Have you ever been on the pulling end of your sled or of a sled?
Oh yeah, not very many times though as it goes. Probably driven 6 or 8 times is all. And probably been down the track close to 60 or 80,000 times.
Oh yeah, I've got 1 or 2 tractors that when it works on the close ones to home that we take and pull, and the fellow that was kind of running it before I owned it, he owned it, and I was working for him. At times we took tractors, and he'd ask what tractor I wanted to pull out of his fleet, and I'd pick one out, and we'd get it running and take it up there, and you'd run it.
Larry Whitmore's sled is only used for your antique tractors because it is geared for slower moving tractors. But as years moved along and bigger tractors came into the market, there was still the drive to see whose tractor was the best. Gary Sobotka's sled has been modified to withstand the power of the newer tractors, even the tractors that are so highly modified that tractor pulling is all they're designed for. But why is there a need to have a tractor that does nothing but be used for tractor pulling?
For me, having a tractor like this is just getting out and see different parts of the country. Going to Missouri and Kansas, seeing different parts of the United States, and then meeting new people and having a lot of friends from all over, not just in one area. I like meeting a lot of new people, and it's a good way to meet new people.
Actually, to have a tractor of this caliber, you ask what's the need for it? Well, there really is no need for it. I mean, you don't make enough money to pay for the expense of it, but what it is, it's a sport, a hobby. We go out, you have fun. The competition against other people, some of them make you mad, so therefore you got to beat them. You got to beat the red ones, you got to beat the orange one because this is a green one. But it's a sport. It's for fun. The fans enjoy it. There's thousands of fans that watch us every night. So I guess it's just a hobby, and it's fun, and just like going to football games or playing golf.
Like most things in life, there are those times when things just don't go right and stuff breaks down. This is especially true for tractor pullers and tractor pull sled owners.
Oh, the worst breakdown, I would say, was about a year ago this spring. At least it was the worst looking. It was we broke a hub down in Lincoln, and the tractor was kind of leaning sideways, and it looked pretty bad because they used a telehandler to get us off the track and load us on back on the trailer. But it wasn't a real major breakdown. It looked worse than it probably really was.
And along with that, at that very same pull, I also broke one on a different tractor where I broke the hub on the same exact side as we did on this one, and we barely limped it off the track and we barely limped it back to the trailer. So 2 hubs in one day is not a good day.
having some carburetor issues. Other than that, never had any catastrophic problems.
Well, Seth just got started here with his a year ago, and he broke a couple things in the engines and couldn't run. But the mean farmer here, when we do engine work, a lot of times I put them on a dyno and we test and tune them on a dyno. I had a brand new engine built, and it was on the dyno. We're testing it, tuning it on the dyno, and it's probably a $60,000 engine. 3 nights before the first hook, and I blew a hole right in the side of the block. So we had to put a new engine together in 3 days, and it cost me a lot of money and no fun.
Well, I've had several major breakdowns. I had to cancel one pull because on the way there I broke shift fork in the transmission and locked it in 2 gears, and we ended up dragging it 70 miles home to get it fixed. And later that summer, the air cleaner came loose, and I didn't catch it in time, and I sucked it full of dirt and ended up overhauling the engine on it.
Scored a piston once, I cracked a hub. Nothing too terribly serious.
A couple turbochargers that blew up and went through the hood and stuff, so I suppose that'd probably be my worst.
But even after all those hardships, when everything goes right, it seems like it just makes up for those days when everything goes wrong.
Probably the best experience I ever had driving was we were down in Kansas and we pulled in a rodeo arena, and you start at one end at the gates and you pull through, and a full pull is pretty much if you go through the other end of the gates, and the track it don't really get narrow, but when you're on the tractor and you're going 30 mile an hour down the track, it sure feels like you only have about 2 foot of space on each side. So when I was pulling, I had the front end up in the air, and I went through those gates, and you just see those gates going flying past you. It feels like you're unstoppable. I think that was about the best feeling I ever had on the seat.
Pulling with the NATPA, National Antique Tractor Pull Association, and coming within a point of winning the championship. It wasn't a good thing, but still, I was close.
One day I won 4 classes. Then I won the jackpot class at the Cornhusker Classic Tractor Pull in Lincoln.
A couple of years ago, it was winning a lot. I won the Wisner, Nebraska tractor pull, and there's a lot of pullers there. I probably had 28 pullers in the class. I won that pull for 3 years in a row and was also the points champion for the Outlaws Association, which covers from South Dakota to Texas, and I was a points champion 3 years. So the Wisner pull, where I won first place at Wisner, Nebraska, which is 10 miles from home, that's something.
Competition-wise, this summer we were at a tractor pull and pulled in 3 classes and got 3 first places, and that's the first time that's ever happened, and it'll probably never happen again.
And for me, for myself, I would think last year I pulled a different tractor, not this one, and this was the last pull of the year, was Wahoo like we are today, and I pulled this one out of the shed with the dust and everything on it, and I come down here in the very first class, I got first place with it, first time I pulled it all year, so that'd probably be my best memory with it.
Through the years, tractor pulls have become less and less of a spectator sport. For a guy who has no clue on how a tractor works, may find this sport rather dull and uneventful. Unless he witnesses a tractor blowing up under the strain of the pull, then he might find this sport rather entertaining. But if you're a guy who's into tractors, either antique or new, or both, may find this sport both enjoyable and eventful. Not only do you get to show off your tractor, if you have one, but you also meet people who share in your love for tractors. So if you're into tractors and want to get into the world of tractor pulling, here are a few great places to start.
The advice that I would actually give to someone who wants to start in the tractor pulls is asking first is like, well, how many tractors have you been gone to? And if you've probably gotten to a few in that, it's like, well, keep going to them, and and just get involved in what goes on with the tractor pulls. And what I like to do is like to sit and watch pulls and see what different techniques that you can see visually, not ask, don't even have to ask the pullers and that, just visually what different things they do and how they pull and what different classes, how the classes go. The next thing you would probably do is figure out what tractor you like I mean, yeah, probably I would say, since I have a farm haul, it's like, oh yeah, get a farm haul, you know, that's the best tractor. It's more likely, what tractor do you like that you would like to fix up or get it running again and then go into this stuff? And it's just a learning curve. I mean, something actually just to have fun. I mean, you don't have to make it a big, you know, winning spree every time. Just have fun with it, and then every time you pull, figure out what you know, if you didn't, whatever place you got, figure out, it's like, okay, well, let's see if I can do something different, like swap my weights around, move my weights to the back, more to the front, and, you know, just stay in the same weight class, but just move your stuff around and figure out how to get your tractor like lighter or maybe a little heavier. It's just, you just learn from every little bit as you go and just have fun with it.
My advice would be, don't get too serious too fast. Enjoy it and just build yourself into it.
Worst thing is you got to have a pickup and a trailer. But other than that, if you can find a tractor, you know, just go out and get started. That's the best way to do it.
What class would you say is the best class to start in?
Oh, I would say probably stock. To get your feet wet, figure it out what you need to do, and just kind of go from there.
Started in, like my case, a plain stock tractor. You know, if you want to try it, just to see if you like it, or what, you know, however it works. You know, I wouldn't go too far away from home. Just try it close around to one, whether it's my sled or someone else's. Or just there's clubs around that have poles and stuff too.
I would say if you're interested in any kind of pulling, which if it'd be the big tractors like these or an antique one or out of the field, go with some of your buddies first that have tractors. Go with them, tag along with them, actually help them fix it and work on it, and see if that's what you want to do. If you like fixing and working in the competition part of it, ask somebody if there's any out there for sale, or talk to people, and just don't go out and buy one thinking that's what you're going to do is go pulling, because it ain't just about going pulling. You got to work on it every night. So go with somebody first, tag along with them, and see if that's what you like, and then maybe find out if your bank account can afford it.
As newer tractors come into the lives of farmers, it isn't common to see the old Johnny Poppers, Farmalls, Cases, McCormicks, and many other old Americana tractors working the fields anymore. So where are these tractors that once roamed the land of Nebraska? Well, sadly, many have disappeared, never to be seen again. And there are some that have blended in with the surrounding landscape, waiting patiently to be restored to their former glory. And there are those tractors, such as these, that have been proudly kept in good or better condition because they once belonged to a family member, or were bought because it reminded them that grandpa or great-grandpa once owned an old tractor, and they bought it because it brought back good memories.
We have mainly Masseys, Mollings, and Olivers, and the reason for that is my grandfather started farming with Masseys. That's the only tractor he ever owned. And my dad's first tractor was a Massey, and then he went over to Oliver's and then to some Mollings. So it's all just on a heritage type thing, just what was in the family.
So this tractor I got behind me is a Farmall H. It was kind of my great-grandpa's that he had, and he always bought it from somebody else and used it a lot for cutting hay or cultivating. Usually it was the only tractor that actually was still running when he passed on. So when my dad actually bought it from my grandma that time, and we were using it on the farm, and that it was more like a toy for most stuff. He's running augers and whatnot with it. So there actually one day I thought, well, let's restore that tractor. That would be a nice tractor to kind of have fun to figure out, you know, learn. It's a big learning curve, you know, when you start being a young guy trying to get involved with these old tractors and see how the engineering was done back then to now. You're kind of comparing a lot of stuff. So I thought, well, let's just overhaul this thing. So we're still in the progress of overhauling it. I mean, everything's been gone through. Engine been overhauled, transmission been, all the bearings, whatnot, checked over, whatnot. And it runs pretty darn good at the point. It ran good before, and now it probably actually runs probably much better. You know, so it's still in the big progress of getting it done. So hopefully by a few more months I can have it all painted up and shine and maybe go through some pulls with it.
But what are the other reasons we should keep these old tractors around?
For me, being older, I grew up on some of them tractors. I kind of like them, you know, at an M and an H and some of them older ones. I like to see them out there yet. I don't want them to die. And Seth, on the other hand, he grew up with these newer ones. Yeah, the new ones are nice, but you kind of, they're all the same. I mean, the principle behind it is the same, so I like watching them older style, even these new tractors like this 8410. I like the older 40 series or hood style. But everybody out wants to build a new one. The last 3 or 4 out, they're starting to build the old ones again, because there ain't many old ones out there. I say old, the 40 series, 30 series hoods, but even the antique tractors, you got to keep the old ones, because you learn off of some of that stuff to go on the new one.
I saw this tractor in a pasture with a tree growing through the frame, and I liked it because it was different, and I know you can do a lot to these type of tractors, and there's so many the other colors. I just wanted one that was different.
Oh, just so the upcoming generation could see the older tractors and how we used to farm, and I mean, I enjoy going and seeing how Grandpa and what tractors they used, and you know, and they have tractor drives and shows now that it's just, to me, it's just history. Interesting to see how far we've came in the last 50 years.
Not only should we keep these fine old tractors to educate the younger generations to come on how tractors came to be, but we should preserve them to serve as a reminder that it was from these old tractors that have plowed the way for the new tractors we see and use in the fields. Tractor pulling is still alive and well in Nebraska. It may not be as popular as the early beginnings of tractor pulling, but it still thrives in the hearts of tractor lovers everywhere, especially in the great state of Nebraska. For Tractor Pulling in Nebraska, I am Matthew Ostry, bidding you a good day and happy pulling.
Thank you.